My name is Adam Glenn. I'm the owner of Jibby's Corner, which is an iconic New York bar. People say we've reached the status of an institution, and I was lucky enough to grow up here. My parents opened it together 55 years ago, so it's been in the family and it's still all family. Me and my nephew run it together now. Jimmy's is it's sort of we've had a lot of different names over time. There was a point where a neighborhood bar, then a sports bar. Now people call us a dive bar. I don't really care what you call us as long as you come in and you enjoy yourself. But for me, because I grew up here, I say we're a neighborhood bar without a neighborhood. We have history in this space. My mom was a bartender at the bar that was here before it was Jimmy's Corner. It's actually where my parents met. My dad was a customer and my mom was working here, and they sort of fell in love here and had another bar. And then in the meantime, the bar that was here closed. One day my dad was walking and he saw it was for rent, and he called the landlord and he said, I want that spot. He was sick of having partners there, and my parents were here ever since. So, it's to me, this is home. It's sort of like where my family started, and I'm really connected to this place and this space and this block. I mean, I was born and raised right here in this bar. There are pictures of my mom working behind the bar with me in her stomach. My earliest memories, I've been working here since I was old enough to push something or move something, loading ice, sweeping. I can remember doing that at 3 or 4 years old. My dad was the best. The only person who was as good as my dad was my mom. He just had a huge heart and he cared about the community. He cared about the people around him, both in boxing and in the bar. He took care of people. He was a dad. I knew that I shared him as a dad with a lot of people. There were just a lot of people that he took under his wing and helped. And so he was just a beloved New York figure, both for everything he did in boxing and everything he did here in the bar, and just the person he was and the spirit he had. My dad reached sort of this status of being like the godfather of a lot of things. So it's kind of like he became kind of that old school OG of like New York boxing, and he had that. And then here, I always used to say he's the mayor of 44th Street. Like, you couldn't go anywhere in Times Square without people knowing who he is and saying, hey, Jimmy. And he just got love, but it was because he gave a lot of love and he looked out for people. So my dad was born in South Carolina, but he was, he was a 75-year New Yorker. So his mom realized that a better life for him wasn't going to happen as a farmer and sharecropper in South Carolina, and she wanted him to have a better life. So she brought him up to New York when he was a kid, and they settled in Harlem. And my dad grew up there, and it's where he fell in love with boxing and spent sort of the first half of his life, and then the second half of his life was down here. Back in the day, in my dad's time, boxing was one of the glamour sports of American sports, right? Like, he grew up in the time of Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson, and so that started it. And also, for a young black kid growing up in Harlem, there's only so many ways that black people could really be heroes back then, right? And so he could look at a Joe Louis, he could look at a Jackie Robinson, but Joe Louis came before that. So those were his heroes. And then I think the first time he stepped in a gym and he saw it, he just fell in love. Like, he was like, this is for me. I love everything about it. I love the science, the hard work, the discipline. And then later, I think the part that he loved the most was seeing how it could change the lives of others. So my dad, he used to run a community center. He cared more about turning young men into better men than he did about turning them into great boxers. Like, boxing was the vehicle to help make them better people. I think for both my parents, my mom didn't sort of come to America or stay in America by choice. She got asylum here because she was kicked out of Poland. My dad was a black man who grew up in 1930. Like, he grew up in the time of segregation and civil rights. So even by the time they opened this place, like when my parents met, interracial couples were not sort of the kind of thing that you see today. And then to have the bar, for a black man to have a business in the middle of Manhattan in Times Square, there were a lot of people who didn't want him to have it. And luckily for him, the bar business was a business that was accessible. And as a black person, you could sort of stake your claim, but he had hurdles. There were people who were trying to keep him from getting a liquor license and saying my dad was a criminal, he was a pimp, my mom was his hooker, you shouldn't let this guy sort of have this business here in Times Square. And my dad had to fight through all those hurdles, but he just had this special way of figuring out the world and navigating through it, and he could just get things done. So, nothing was gonna stop him once he put his mind to it. I think for my dad, he was more practical, right? So whenever my dad would talk about his heroes or people like he really thought a lot of, he would always say like they stood up. When it mattered, they stood up. And at that time, I think my dad was just standing up for his life and his family. He wanted to have a way to have something that he could own, that he could control, that his hard work would sort of give him the benefit of. And so he wanted to own his own business and he wanted to do that. And I think later on, he sort of realized how revolutionary what he did was. But at the time, I think he was trying to just do something to build a life for his family. But after he did it, he realized and he tried to help a lot of other people do the same thing. While he was doing it, right, seeing all the hurdles and going through it and realizing like, oh, this is what it takes to start a business. This is what it takes. So, if he could help someone else, if he could give someone else some advice and make that more possible for them, he wanted to do that. And I know a lot of, I talked to other bar owners, other business owners who were like, oh, I met your dad and he gave me this great piece of advice. He helped me. And he didn't have to, right? He just kind of pulled me aside and put me on the right track. So I think it's once he started to have some success and because he was smart enough to know, I can't give advice on something I don't know. So it wasn't day one. It was as he was learning and seeing all the hurdles he went through, he wanted to make it easier for someone. And as he realized, okay, because it was a very long time before Jimmy's was Jimmy's Corner. We were just a bar for a long time, right? And we were living month to month. You rob Peter to pay Paul, you pay this bill and hope that bill doesn't come due. And it took a long time to get here. So I think it was a while before he was like, oh, I'm a success, right? But there's a point of pride of just saying, I'm here. I built this and I'm here and I've survived and I'm running this business. So I think it was sort of step by step, but he wanted to see other people have an easier time than he did. I don't know if it was 3 years old or 4 years old, but I remember like Saturdays were my day with my dad. I would either be here or we owned a boxing gym on 42nd Street all day. And it was like the most fun day of the week for me because I got to be around people from all over the world, all walks of life. I didn't get to travel all the time. I didn't get to see everything, but I always tell people like I got to travel the world from a bar stool. I was here. I could talk to people, and people, I think just because I was Jimmy and Swanee's son and I was in the bar, I'd be 5 years old and people would be talking to me like I was a little adult, right? They'd be telling me about things and listening to me talk about book reports and things like that. So it's like I got to feel like I was a part of the world and a part of the adult world. So I've loved this place since I was a little kid. And for me, it's home, it's family time. Like I would run behind the bar and pour a soda and do this. And, it's always been the place in my life that I feel the most comfortable, the closest to my family. When I walk in here, I remember my mom, I remember my dad. Every spot has a meaning to me that's more than just a business. My dad was kind of this great, very well-known checker player. And so I think for a lot of people, they would come in, they just want to play him, right? Like they'd want to say, oh, I played with Jimmy, I got to hang out with him. And it's funny because like when I used to just sit there all summer, all day, and I would play with him, and he'd beat me 99 out of 100 times. But when I got that win and I finally beat him once, it was like the greatest accomplishment of my life to that point. And then, it'd be funny because sometimes I'd be here and it could be late at night, it could be something, and someone would want to play my dad, and if he didn't know them, sometimes he would make them play me, right? And he's like, if you can't beat my son, you're never going to beat me. And when you're 10 or 11, if you feel like you can like defend the legacy of the family and do that, like knowing that I did that and seeing the smile on my dad's face, like if I actually beat them, like was amazing. And if I lost, then my dad would come and wash them out. And it was like, that felt good too, because I kind of was like, you don't know what's coming for you. And like my dad would come and take care of it. So it was like, those are the kinds of experiences. I've gotten to live a very non-traditional life, but I wouldn't want anything else. It's been the best life. And that's because of this place. I was lucky enough that my parents were always very proud of me and they always supported me. So like my mom would push me to do things. I remember even when I got into Harvard Law School, like the first call was my parents. I got a call at home and they said you got admitted, and I called my mom, and both my mom and my dad were here at the bar, and I told them I got in, and I remember I could hear my mom telling my dad, and my parents didn't give stuff away. Like that wasn't a thing, but I hear my dad in the back, everyone gets a drink, right? And like hearing that, and this is the first place I came after that, right? I called them, and 20 minutes later I got dressed and I came here to give them a hug and a kiss and celebrate with them. So, all those sorts of memories that are locked into this place and the community around it, right? Because I wanted to be here with my parents. I wanted to be here with the regulars and the friends and the patrons that knew us, right? There were people who were actually invested in my future, just customers who were so happy to hear about that and to see the pride that my parents had. So it's just always been a place that I know I'm supported, but I know other people are, right? Like when I hear my customers going off to do great things and pursue their dreams, like, I have people who used to come here that I see on TV now, and I'm so proud of them just knowing that we were a part of that journey. Like, that means something to me. Jimmy's is a space, and it's a beautiful space, and it's special, but it's made up of the people here, right? Like, it carries my parents' personality, which hopefully I carry also, and my family. And so it's us and the people that were here that made ourselves a part of this neighborhood and took ownership of it, took stewardship of this block, said, you know what, if our business is here, we're going to make sure that this place is safe. We're going to make sure that nothing happens around us, right? And so knowing that we've looked out for and protected people who live on this block, we've stopped crimes, and we've talked to, troubled youth and others and said, hey, you don't want to do that, right? And we've done things to make our neighborhood and our community better. And if you're a pure capitalist, we've also done stuff to make it more valuable, right? Like if there is less crime and there is more community, more people want to be there. People feel safe. Back in the bad old days of Times Square, where everything out there was vice and pimps and sex shops and things like that, everyone knew this was a safe, straight, crime-free bar where we just run an honest business. There's no drugs, there's no sex, there's not that. It's just a good, safe, fun environment, and we were running that place and building that little oasis in like a world of trouble and vice and crime. So I feel really proud of that fact that we've always been that, and we continue to be that, because I make sure people get home safe. I make sure that they don't get victimized, and that's something I learned from my parents. I didn't just come to me one day. I wish I was just independently that amazing, but like I learned it from people who did it before and taught me that you have a responsibility to this neighborhood, right? Like, you want to have a business here, you want people to come in, you want them to spend their money, you have to take care of them. You know, for a long time, and and I feel lucky that I got to grow up in it because it was the gritty sort of old school New York. But for a long time, Times Square was an unsafe area, right? You had purse snatchers and pickpockets and criminals and mobsters and things like that. And so after dark, if you were in Times Square, you were usually up to no good or you were unsafe. And so for a lot of people who lived in these buildings around here, you know, they lived here because it was cheap or because it was convenient, but they didn't feel safe. And so I still get people now who tell me, hey, you know what, I lived there 40 years ago or 30 years ago, and the only reason I felt safe coming home at 2 or 3 in the morning was because I knew Jimmy was on the block. I knew if anything happened to me, he was out there, he was keeping an eye, he was looking out for us, or I could run into Jimmy's and he would help me. And that means something, right? Like, they had great, safe New York experiences, and they love this city because there was someone out there watching out for them. We've been on this block my whole life. I can't remember a day in my life that 44th Street wasn't a part of my life and that Jimmy's wasn't sort of the hub of that. And as New Yorkers, but as anyone in any community, you have the ability to sort of impact and frame what goes on around you. And so I've always felt that this is my block, it's my home. And if I see something happening that I don't think should be happening, I have a responsibility to step in to try to make it better, to be a part of that. And I learned that from my parents. And so, you know, we wanted this, we wanted to see other businesses make it here. We wanted to see people thrive here. We want to see people having fun and enjoying themselves. And it's our job to make sure that that environment exists for them. So I think it's right the same way you want to keep your home safe. Like, to me, this is as much my home as anywhere I ever lived, right? Like, for me, I want to know this is safe. I want to know that people will get to have the kind of experiences I got to have, like being a little kid running around and enjoying it. Whoever you are, if you want to be in Times Square, I want you to be able to do that in a real way, in a safe way, in a way where you get to enjoy the best parts of New York. Because unlike most New Yorkers, like, I grew up here, I love Times Square. Like, I think Times Square is amazing. I understand why more New Yorkers don't hang out in it, because it's touristy and everything. But like, it's touristy because it's great, because it's cool, because it's something you can't see everywhere. My family and the Dursts have known each other for 55 years, if not more. Seymour Durst, who was sort of the elder Durst, Douglas Durst being his son, he owned everything around here, including our bar. And my dad, you know, speaking of keeping people safe and sort of caring about the neighborhood you're in, that's how our relationship started with them, right? My dad protected Seymour from getting robbed because back then, you know, you used to walk around and he was a fixture in the neighborhood. My dad saw some young kids looking to rob him, and he put his arm around them and he chased them off, and that started a relationship, I think, because he saw the value that having someone like that in the neighborhood has. And it didn't mean that we got free rent. He wanted someone like Jimmy in the neighborhood. And so for many years, we had a great relationship. And that's why I was so surprised and shocked when all of this happened, because to me, these are people I grew up caring about. You know, my dad knew Seymour. He was close with Douglas. Douglas's kids used to come in here and play video games and go to our boxing gym. So, you know, I felt like we were two families that really did care about this neighborhood and cared about this community. And I feel like, unfortunately, I still really am invested in this community and care about it. And I think, you know, at some point they stopped caring about the people in it and just really only seemed to care about the buildings in it and the rent they could get. And that's unfortunate, because you need people like that, right? Like, I'm not naive. They have money. They're the developers. They build. You need those people to care about the people that actually go into the buildings that they're building. It hurts and it's disappointing because it's someone that you care about. And even though I didn't necessarily have the same relationship with them as my dad did, knowing that they took advantage of my dad, or maybe he cared about them more than they cared about him, that's really disappointing. And it hurts because there is a way to do this. And it would feel very different if it was someone that I just never met before and I didn't know, and it was this arm's length business transaction. It still would feel wrong, right? Because what they're doing is not just sort of the wrong thing, but they're doing it in the wrong way. And so all of that is wrapped up into this because it is a real relationship, or what I thought was a real relationship. But at the end of the day, the way I see it, this is a continuation of my family's story. Like, if my dad and my mom had to fight to have this place and build this place, and I watched them fight my whole life to keep it and keep the business going, if I have to fight to keep it, I'm willing to do that. For us, to have people that you called friends, to have people that you thought were almost like your extended family treat you in this way, feels like a very, very deep betrayal. And besides the business aspects and the legal aspects, which I think are wrong, that part of the relationship has been, maybe the most disappointing part of all of this. While my dad thought that they were friends and thought they had a good relationship, they were already thinking about how to move us out. They snuck a very ugly and what I would say is unenforceable and illegal provision into an old lease, which said that if my dad dies, they could kick us out. Unfortunately, that doesn't match up with any of the promises they made to me, anything in the leases that came later. And because I'm lucky enough to have a legal background, I know that you're not allowed to do that, right? That's fraud, that's unconscionable. And so that's what we're fighting over, right? And we're not fighting over the fact that they want to sell this building, because if it was just that, with the relationship we had, we could have figured out how to do it. The problem is that they want to do this in the ugliest and the greediest way possible. And from my standpoint, if you're going to do the wrong thing to us, then I'm going to fight you. And I'm going to fight you till there's no more fight left. I'll fight you in the courts. I'll fight you with politicians. I'll fight you in the press, because I know that I'm fighting for the right thing. I'm fighting for my family's legacy. I'm fighting for not just myself, but other small businesses and other New Yorkers who just don't want to see our city being destroyed this way. From when I was a kid, and that's why I call us like a neighborhood bar without a neighborhood. When I was a kid, Times Square was a neighborhood. More people lived around here. It was more small businesses. There were other families that there's a restaurant across the street, and we knew the owners, and I know their kids, and so it felt much more like a neighborhood, and we were more tied together. And I always say, to open a small business in New York, it takes courage. You have to be brave to be willing to do that. You put a lot on the line when you, especially in New York, because the rents are so high and there's so much regulation. So to go through all that, you feel kind of tied together. You have a kinship with other people. And over time, as Times Square has cleaned up, and I don't want to say that it hasn't, because there are definitely things that have gotten better in ways that Times Square has gotten better. But it's just so unfortunate that, what we do as the people who care about the community and make it safer and make it better and add value to it and make it more attractive for more businesses to come in and for more people to be here, we sort of build that value and we build that market and we make it a place that's attractive to everyone. And then the landlords try to extract all that value and push us out. And so seeing the number of real legacy businesses and people that have been here shrink and more be forced out of the neighborhood, it's sad because you're losing the character and the authenticity. You're losing the part that made people want to be here in the first place. And eventually, right, if we get rid of all the authenticity and all the character in New York, why is anyone going to come? We have something special, and we have to figure out a way to get rid of the bad stuff, but keep the stuff that really made it great and really makes it New York. It's an unfortunate reality, and I think that's what hopefully, some of the politicians behind this small business rent stabilization and other stuff are trying to figure out and capture is that, you know, we as business owners and people who are really invested and tied to these neighborhoods, we care. We care enough to make them safer. We care enough to be on the street and make sure everyone's good. We care enough to learn the names of the people in the neighborhood. And so we make that place safer. We make it more valuable. We make it more attractive. We raise the property values. We create this reason for people. I don't know anyone that who's a New Yorker who comes to Times Square just to go to Olive Garden. But I know a lot of people who come to Times Square just to go to Jimmy's, right? We bring this value to the neighborhood that makes it possible for them to rent the space next door for more or to sell the building for more. But then, right after we've done that and we've done all this legwork and provided security and all of that, the landlords then figure out immediately how to flip that to the next person who can pay more. And so they extract all that value, and unfortunately, the small business owner doesn't get it. And it's just an unfair and an unfortunate situation, and there has to be a better balance for that. We're definitely the oldest thing on the block, and I think we might be the oldest thing. Some of obviously the hotels and the theaters, but in terms of a bar, we're the oldest thing around here. I think if you get over to 9th, there's some stuff that's been around longer than us, but we're a fixture of this neighborhood. I don't think 44th Street would feel the same, and I think we bring something that's completely different than everything else, right? Times Square has plenty of fancy restaurants, and it has plenty of Irish pubs and plenty of other things, and I love those, and they're important. But there is no other Black-owned business around here. There is no other business that caters to the everyman, right? We are a place where you could have a CEO sitting next to a construction worker, sitting next to a school teacher, and a homeless person, and they can all be treated equally and have an affordable drink. There's no other place around here. There's no other place that feels as comfortable for young Black and brown people as Jimmy's does. I love that we get this cross section of the world because I feel like we get all the best parts of New York right in here. And when people come here, they have a real authentic New York experience. And knowing that I could give that to them means something to me. And I think the neighborhood would lose something if they didn't have that anymore. Currently, we're deep in this fight. So we've sued the landlord over this death clause that they put into our old lease and the way that they're enforcing it, because I feel like it was discriminatory and unconscionable and problematic. And so we're fighting them on that, and they're fighting to evict us. And we've been going back and forth in court. So on April 15th, we have our next court date, which is over a motion to dismiss. So basically, they're trying to tell the court that we haven't raised any reasonable claims and they should be able to dismiss our case. And we're fighting that. And if we get past that hurdle, then that brings us to the next step in our fight. It means that we get to live to fight another day. And as long as we're in the fight, we have a chance. I can't really tell people, people ask me, are you going to win? Are you going to lose? I don't know. What I know is that I'm fighting, and I'm not going to stop fighting, and that every single day that I get to stay here, because my landlord wanted me out in November, I call that a win. Every day that my customers get to enjoy themselves and my workers get to make money and I get to have another day in my bar is a win. So I'm winning today, I'll be winning on April 15th, and I'll be winning till I eventually am out of here, whether it's 6 months from now or 6 years from now. I feel a real deep responsibility. For me, this is a legacy, and it is, and I don't do this just because of my parents, because I love this place, right? I love it. I do it for me, but knowing that I'm honoring them and that they would be proud of me means a lot to me. And if I get to do both at the same time, right, I get to support my family and know that all the people who work here can make money and have a job and continue to live their lives. And at the same time, I know that I'm doing something that would make my parents proud. That feels amazing. And then, to the community, I feel a real deep sense of responsibility because it's easy for people to forget. It's, when my dad died and we were closed during COVID and we were closed for 18 months, it's easy for people to forget. You can't blame people if they go start drinking somewhere else or they do something. So the fact that that community stuck with me, and the day I opened, they were lined up at the door ready to come, and, that they've been so connected, the fact that 15,000 people around the world watched my dad's funeral because we had to do it on Facebook Live because it was during COVID. That means something to me. Like that's not just a sort of passing care or a fake love. They love this place, and if they put that much of their heart and their soul into a place that my family built, I owe something to them to make sure that I do the best I can to protect it. What I was saying before, the fact that it takes courage to start a business in New York and to do that. And so I support this effort. I support what they're doing because if you put your livelihood and your life and your money on the line and your family's future and you do all that and you make it, right? You've gotten over every hurdle and you make it. Someone shouldn't just be able to take it away from you because they think they could get a little bit more money from someone else, right? I understand that there are businesses that will make it and there are businesses that won't. But if you've done the work and you've done all that and now you've created this business and you've improved your community and all of that, someone shouldn't just be able to move you out because they think, oh, Starbucks will pay more, right? Maybe they will, but they're not going to mean the same thing to that community. And there have to be protections and there have to be things in place to allow small businesses that really care about and improve the fabric of New York to exist. And, I've been lucky enough because I am a lawyer and I have that background and I went to Harvard and I did those things. I've been lucky enough to be able to fight, but I know for a lot of small businesses, they can't or they don't feel like they can. And so the more protections we can give them and the more opportunities we can create for New Yorkers to really build something and to build something for their family and create legacy, the better it is for this city. So I love New York. I'm a lifelong New Yorker and I'm never going to go anywhere. And so for me, seeing people out there making a real effort to protect that and protect the community and protect the authenticity of this city, it means a lot. And that's why I'm behind the effort. When you walk around and you see all these vacant storefronts, it makes, I mean, not only does it make the city feel less vibrant, the city is less vibrant, right? Like there's less going on and it feels wasted. It feels like these wasted opportunities for people to be pursuing their dreams, building their lives, helping their families, for people to work. So it's when I see it, and I see it I see it around here with all the businesses that have closed. I see it in the neighborhood where I grew up with vacant storefronts. It makes it, it makes it less attractive to others, but it also just feels sad when you remember what it was and you remember, oh, that place wasn't just a place, that was a family. Like a family made their living there and they built their legacy there. And so it feels like New York in certain ways has less opportunity for just those people who are trying to come up, right? It's, yeah, you can open a Starbucks, but what about that family that's opening their first business ever? And this is maybe going to put them in a position to have a better life and their kids to then have a better life. And it feels like there's less of that opportunity in the city. So it's sad. And it's sad to see these places just remain vacant for years. I think New Yorkers they have to keep the attention and the pressure on developers and landlords. They have to look at who the good actors are and sort of support that. And with their dollars, with their feet, with their voice, they have to let everyone know who the bad actors are. I think legislation like this, they should be calling for their local assembly and state senators and others to support anything that will help small business, including the Commercial Rent Stabilization Act. I think they need to vote with their feet and their dollars. And I get it. It's easy. There's a Dunkin' Donuts on every corner. I'm not going to say I don't go, but you have to support the places that you really care about. Because for some places, we're lucky enough that our fight is not just about the rent. And I wish it was, because we could figure that out. But for some places, we can't just say, oh, we love having small businesses in our neighborhoods, but we gotta get out and walk and get to those places and actually spend our dollars there so we can help them make it. There's a lot of things to do, but if we want to have the city that we say we want, which is full of authentic, real, true New York businesses, then we have to do everything and push everyone to support that. It might be one bar, but it means something to thousands and thousands of people. And that's the important part. It means something to a community of people, and not just here in New York. I get messages of support from people all over the world all the time. Keep fighting. I wish I was in New York so I can support you. So, maybe it is one place, but it has tendrils and branches that reach far out. And also, we've been here for 55 years. We get good press. We're lucky enough to have a really good business. So if this can happen to us, this can happen to many small businesses all over the city, and a lot of them that don't feel as empowered or have the same resources to fight. Jimmy's just brings together this weird cast of characters where you never know who it could be. And sometimes it could be some completely crazy thing, and the next day it could be the biggest star in the world. And but that's what New York is supposed to be, right? Like that's what makes it great. Like it's not like LA where you see stars all the time, but they live in this. If you want to be in New York, you kind of have to live on the level that everyone else does, right? You have to walk in the streets with us. You have to be out with everyone, and that's what makes it such a great city. That's what I love, and having that here at Jimmy's and having it be like this little microcosm of the melting pot that is New York. Like I've always felt so lucky that I get to have that, and then I get to hear these stories where people come back to me, oh, 20 years ago, I had the best time here, or you guys made my New York experience, because I know that's not happening everywhere else. And that's unfortunate. I wish it was, but being able to hold that down and hold that legacy here, like it's something I feel very proud of. So what I would say, like when people ask me what my favorite picture is, or it's different than what they'll care about, right? Like, so for most people, their favorite pictures are like my dad and Muhammad Ali, or him with Mike Tyson. But to me, when someone says this is like a museum, to me, it's really a family album, because these pictures are all people my dad knew, patrons from a long time ago, people that I've actually had interactions with. So for me, the pictures that mean the most are the family pictures, certain pictures of my dad or my mom or all of us together where I remember experiences in here. Like I've always been super proud of my parents, and all the people my dad knew and worked with and was friends with. But for me, like I sort of also like got that from my dad, where I'm not really that starstruck by that. Like I've been lucky enough to meet those people. So for me, when I look around, it's like the guy that used to come here 30 years ago and was just really nice to me. And I remember him. He was a nice guy. Or that's how I feel about this. It's really just a family history that happens to have a lot of famous people in it. Like I did that whole wall for my mom, and I think, it's funny because it's Jimmy's corner, so everyone always knows who my dad is, and I guess part of it because I know how important my mom was to this business, but she was always kind of happy to be in the background. I try to highlight her too because I feel like she was always like this really strong lady behind a great man, but I want people to know how important she was to it. So, when we reopened after COVID, I said I'm going to give my mom her own wall. I'm going to give my dad a wall, and this way people at least they can see her, and they can see her from the beginning, right? So there are pictures of her bartending here, working. Like some of those are from when my parents first met, because she held this place down as much as he did. It was a joint effort. He just he's the face of it. But, they did everything together. And that's why I'm really proud of both of them. Like I feel super lucky that I got to have the experience of both of them. My dad taught me certain things about life in this business, and my mom taught me others. Like my mom taught me how to bartend. I worked with her every Sunday for 5 years. Right? And it's like those are memories that I'll never, like they'll always be with me. And they'll be some of the happiest memories. Like the most fun I ever had behind the bar was bartending with my mom. She had an understanding where she was like, your dad is Jimmy, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not being the face of it. And some people won't know who I am, and that's all right. So I feel like if you put her in the flyer, a lot of people will be like, oh, who's that? But they wouldn't know. And she's okay not being in it. Like she accepted at a certain point. She was like, I am very happy to be this strong woman behind, who's willing to be kind of like behind and supporting the men in my life. And that's how she was with my dad, and that's how she was with me. My friends would joke where they were like, your mom loves you in an unreasonable way. Where it's like, she could make fun of me all day, but you can't say anything bad about me. And I tell everyone, everyone should be that lucky to have someone who loves them unreasonably. And so I hit the lottery when it came to parents. And they were different in all the outward ways, but they were the same at the core. Honest, hardworking, caring, loving. They just expressed it differently. When people talk about Jimmy's, they're like, oh, you can't move because it won't be the same. You can't do this because it won't be the same. And I tell them, I don't want to move, ever. But I think if that ever has to happen, if I'm there, my nephew is there, my workers are there, my customers are there, it won't be the same, but it can still be great. And that's kind of how I felt like when my mom passed in 2015. Like, how is Jimmy's ever going to be the same without her in it? Running this place with an iron fist. And it wasn't the same, but it's still great. And then when my dad died of COVID, right, we were closed for 18 months. How are you going to have Jimmy's without Jimmy in it? He'd been here almost every day for 50 years. But when we reopened, it's not the same. It doesn't feel the same, but it's still great. And when people tell me it still feels like he's here, I feel your parents' presence, that's the best compliment you can give me. Because if it still has the spirit and the ethic that they put in it, then I'm doing the right thing. That's all I want it to be, right? Like I want it to be the same place it was when I was a kid. I want it to be the same place that I fell in love with. So, that's all I really try to put into this place is just, I got something that's good enough that my main job is just not to mess it up.